Hi, everyone. Welcome to our not live stream, our pre-recorded stream, Content Marketing for Creatives panel. My name is Olivia Mancuso. I'm the Community Director at the 2112 Creative Industries Incubator. We're really excited to bring this panel today to talk about content marketing specifically for creative entrepreneurs. So we're going to do a little mic sharing, but I want to jump right into it and get started by introducing our panelists, or rather having you introduce yourselves. We're going to start with Jack Ekblad from HubSpot. Here you go.
Thanks so much for having me, Olivia. My name is Jack Ekblad. I am head of partnerships for the HubSpot for Startups program in Middle America. So we partner with creative spaces like 2112, venture capital firms, incubators, accelerators to provide discounting, but also education to entrepreneurs and startups between the coasts.
Awesome. Thank you, Olivia, for inviting me out. I'm Demetri Morris. I'm the founder and CEO of a digital agency called Morr Creative. Basically help B2B businesses build strategic tech and marketing playbooks, basically giving them a whole plan, right? Instead of just prescribing, you need to do a video, or you need to do a website. We're going to figure out what's your issue. So we're going to do an end-to-end customer diagnosis. And then from there, really going to figure out what it's going to take. And so really our goal is to help people accelerate their revenue growth, get more customers, save time, eliminate guesswork. And so I've been doing that for about 3 years, and I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's glad to be here in Chicago.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me as well. So I'm Lauren Ramsey. I'm the founder of Betsy Bash. It's the digital agency here in Chicago. Betsy Bash is a name that's inspired by my grandmothers and 2 lessons that they taught me, which is always be yourself and always know your etiquette. And I think these lessons are great for life, but they really play out on social media where you're not the only one in the game, right? You're competing against everybody else on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. And if you don't know how to do it, you're at a disadvantage. So we work with retailers, restaurants, anybody in the B2C space primarily, and help them grow their presence online, get seen by who they need to be seen by to make those sales, and keep going.
Awesome. This is such an awesome panel because we have, you're all kind of had different backgrounds and different approaches to content marketing, which I think is something that scares a lot of people who are, starting to learn what content marketing is. So that's what we're going to get into today is what is it? How can you utilize it to increase your brand awareness? And it's and hopefully by the end of this, creative startups will understand it's really not that scary. It's a big, vast world out there, but it's very doable for everyone. So jumping right into it. So crafting a content marketing strategy can be anxiety inducing for creatives because there's so much information out there, especially if they're working with, a small team or they're solo. What are some common misconceptions you hear about content marketing? And because one thing I always hear is, I can't do it all. I can't do Instagram and Facebook and podcasting. Let's start off by dispelling that myth. So we'll go again in the same order. We'll go down the row.
Sure. So those businesses or those creatives looking to start their marketing, it is a lot to contemplate. And that first step is the most anxiety inducing, like you said, Olivia. I would really start with some really simple questions. Who are you targeting? I think Demetri is going to get into that a lot too. Where are you going to find them? And what action do you want those folks to take once they find your content? And if you can break down the mechanics of the marketing campaign that you need to launch, it will give you that first step, whether it makes sense to be on social media, whether paid ads is actually one of the things that you should be focusing on, or maybe you should just focus on SEO. So if you look at the who, where you're going to find the who, and then what you want them to do once they find your content, that's going to give you your first step.
Right on. That's good. I'd say the misconception is that really when approaching it, I think a lot of people see it as like, I have to be on every platform. I have to figure out a TikTok strategy, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever, right? It's like, no, right? Let's, again, go back to those questions, which are really important, which is essentially your go-to-market strategy. Like, how are you going to even, talk to people? Figure that out, figure out where people are at, and start adding value. And so a misconception is, it's misunderstanding that there's a value ladder behind it, right? You're not going to post content and get a sale right away. No, it's not. That's not how it works, right? It's a value ladder, and I'd love to unpack this, right? But each step is getting closer and closer to you building authority, and that authority is when you can actually make a transaction, and that's where you start working with somebody, right? But without that value ladder in place, it's not going to work right away, So that's my answer.
All good answers, hard to follow. But no, I think, what I wanted to bring to this conversation is the power of connection. and that one-to-one connection. So if you're a founder and it's just you, pick a channel that you love already and just go all in. So if Instagram is your jam, get in those Instagram DMs, start making connections with people that are following you already, and grow that follower base through conversations. That's one of the things that we do for our clients. Always yields amazing results.
I love that. And I think, Demetri, you said something about, you're not going to make a sale right away. I think a lot of people get discouraged because they'll post something and the video will get like 5 likes and they think they're a failure, and you're not. It takes time, right? It takes time. I don't know. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, give yourself 6 months. I mean, anything that was worthwhile, give yourself like 6 months of like going hard, maybe invest in, like, if you have a budget, invest in a creative, videographer, copywriter. Like, actually, I would say copywriting is the most invaluable skill. Like, read a book on it, right? Start writing content, like, and give yourself that time period to like start seeing results and like track. We'll go into this. Track your results, right? I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, a colleague of mine has a great phrase that marketing, especially search engine optimization, SEO, the content you create, it's a cake that you bake. It's not a switch that you flip. And just like a cake, it takes time. And also, if you forget one ingredient,
nasty cake.
So one thing I definitely want to add is that the quality matters, right? I think one thing that people tend to forget, especially if you're targeting millennials or Gen Z, but specifically millennials, we have been around social media for a long time, like a long time. So we can spot bad content a mile away, and it's not going to do you any favors to put something out there just to have something out. Like, it needs to be good.
Definitely. And I think, just to add, from being someone who utilizes content marketing myself, that posting just to post, bad idea. You don't, even though all those algorithms are saying, oh, you need to post 5 stories a day, on Instagram and do this and that, you don't have something good to post. Just let's skip it. Okay, so there's a lot of noise out there surrounding content marketing, especially with, trends changing rapidly, and there's a lot of bad information out there, kind of like I just mentioned. Oh, you need to post this amount of times a day and do this and that, but it's not ever really verified, right? You're not talking to someone directly at Instagram or directly, on Apple Podcasts. So how do creatives know who to listen to, and what criteria should they use when being selective about, okay, I kind of know where I want to start, but there's so many different strategies. How do they stay true to themselves and do something that's going to work for them and not overwhelm them?
So the 2 parts to that question are data. How do you understand where the trends are going and who to trust? And the second part was, as they get going, how do they stay true to themselves? Yes. So I think we're facing misinformation on a number of levels here, and we're not going to get too deep into that topic. But I do think that as individuals in the information age, if your data is bad, go seek more. The one person I don't understand is the person who's like, I don't trust any of the media, so I just listen to one podcast. It's like one dude in his mother's basement has really clarified truth for you. That seems suspect. So I'll say, the answer to bad data is more data, better data. Always be challenging it. In terms of staying true to yourself, if you have a clear idea of your customer and you are true to them, if you know your audience and you're true to them, you're true to yourself.
Boom.
Can you ask that question one more time?
Yes. So with all the noise out there, about surrounding what you should do, what your content marketing strategy should be, if you look up on Google, how should I do content marketing? You're going to get 50 different blogs that are perfectly optimized for SEO telling you what to do. How do you eliminate all that noise and focus on what works best for you?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. The way I look at it and the way I've approached it specifically this year. So this year I've hired 2 coaches to help me work on my digital agency. I think it's like important to reinvest. Sure, it was expensive, but it was worth it because I'm talking to people that solve the problem that like I'm having, which is I want to continue to scale, right? We're on the right track. Let's scale. I think it's figuring out who you can trust in those spaces of who's creating content, right? And trusting your gut, right? Like, there's so many people that were trying to get me on the phone, try to sell them their, whatever, $10,000 program to help me scale my agency to $300,000 a month, right? Like, if it didn't feel right, like, and that's the thing. A lot of what we're doing with content marketing and like building a brand, it's a lot about instincts. It's a lot about trusting yourself, building whatever. But yeah, it's just going off your gut with who you think is actually going to help you.
I love that.
So yeah, I think, if you can't measure it, you shouldn't be managing it. So start with what, kind of going back to the advice before, follow what you've got time to do and find a content marketing avenue in what you like to do that you want to do over and over and over again, and then measure it, right? But then also with that caveat of how deep do you need to go into it, right? So to give you an example, I used to have a podcast. I loved it. It was fun. It was hosted on all the things. It was a lot of time and a lot of money. And then people kept asking me, like, start a new podcast. And I'm like, well, that's a lot of time and money. And so what I eventually came down to was, yes, I want to share information that is in my head through audio, because it's a fun way for me to do it. But I'm not going to go all the way into a podcast and try to be the #1 podcaster on iTunes or podcast app, whatever they want to call it now. But I am going to put it on my website, because when people come to my website, they can look at my podcasts and hear from me on what I want to talk about, what our expertise is, and that is good. That is good enough. If I can measure the traffic that's going to that website to see who's clicked on what, and I know which episodes are the most popular, that's good enough for me, right? So I think you also have to decide what your ultimate goal is and make a plan for that, not for what people are telling you to do. Like, grow your agency to be blah, blah, blah. You're like, well, I'm where I want to be, and that's good enough for me.
I love that. That really speaks to the time management thing too. You're not trying to do all the things. And I have a really quick anecdote, because it's too good not to share, based on what you said. So I am a former journalist, and I'm looking to eventually put a course out there for media training, through Teachable or something else. And I didn't know anything about the course building world until I heard a podcast about it. And I wanted to jump in head first and build this course without even having a following or a funnel on my Instagram, an audience, and an email list to get them to buy the course. Talked to a couple different people. Fortunately, I had someone who told me, hey, you need to back up and do all these things first. However, there was 2 individuals, and I would never call anyone out or put them on blast, but they said, yeah, we can do this course for you, XYZ. It's going to be $8,000, and we'll do a rev share. They didn't tell me I needed to do all the things, all the content marketing, the free stuff, the free content out there in the email list to actually have an audience to follow me before I did. They just wanted to take my $8,000, which I definitely don't have. So that's a really good point about trusting your gut, because it just didn't feel right. And I'm like, I don't know. Everyone else kind of who I consulted with kind of took this slow with me. And then I have these 2 guys out here saying, yeah, we can do it for you. So I trusted my gut, and also, again, didn't have $8,000 to give them. So that also helped me not make that decision.
Capitalism's an ecosystem, and that means there are bottom feeders.
Oh, I hope they don't watch that. I love that, though. Okay, so we have a couple questions that came in from the stream before we weren't able to do the stream, so I want to get to those. But my last question for you, this is I'm really excited about this, because I'm probably going to steal whatever tip you give. Let's hear one tangible content marketing idea a creative startup could implement right now. It could be really easy. It could be broad in general, but let's just help get the ideas flowing.
And in full transparency, we set our tips to one another to make sure no one was stealing. And I think we agreed that we were going to start with Demetri and then go to Lauren, and then I'll bring up the rear. Yeah.
Cool. I'll start it off. I want to help it. Okay. The first one would be start talking to your audience. If you don't know how to build an audience, I think the best place to start is Facebook groups, right? It's free, right? There's not really any barrier to entry other than filling out the little form. But then when you join, you're going to join a community of people that are centered around whoever you're trying to target. Start delivering value. Start, asking questions, connecting with people, right? Ultimately, there's this idea of a flywheel, which is the more conversations you have, the more sales calls you're going to get, and the more sales calls you get, the more clients you're going to get, right? And so do whatever you can repeat ultimately, and being able to start conversations in the DM and kind of get people to trust you, I think is a great place to start. And then second, if you're looking for okay, how do I even create content, right? 1, read a book on copywriting, and And two, start to reverse engineer, start to like peel back the layer on what problem are you solving for your client, right? Break it down into 4 pillars and then start creating content based on those 4 pillars. You're going to feel weird because you're going to be giving away your good stuff, but like people aren't even going to implement it half the time, but they're going to trust you because it's like, this dude knows what he's talking about, right? And so if you start doing that, I think you'll see some results.
Yes. So then once you know what problem you're trying to solve, I think that's where you do the exercise of what am I the best at when it comes to delivery? Am I a great blogger? Am I a great podcaster? Am I great on Instagram stories? And I think one way that's fun to figure out what you're the best at is to ask your friends. Like send them an email and ask them, what am I the best at when it comes to marketing? Or where have you asked me a question and I've given you the best answer, and what medium was that in? And then start following that path. It might be an answer that surprises you. They might say you're great at emails, and you're like, I didn't even think about that. But I think follow that advice and see where people already like how you're delivering information and keep going down that path.
All great advice. And so if you're a creative entrepreneur or just an entrepreneur in general, and you understand your audience, you're starting to take the actions that Lauren and Demetri have outlined, my piece of advice is to be brutally honest about auditing your conversion paths. I cannot tell you as a salesperson in this role in partnerships how many truly sophisticated marketers I've interacted with who drop the ball at the last 5 yards and don't get that conversion. People who are creating amazing Facebook videos that are really well produced and look pretty expensive. And what happens when you click on them? Nothing. Absolutely nothing happens. There are marketers out there who are creating podcasts, creating pillar pages with an Alexa rank of less than 1 million, which if you don't know what that is, Google it, because you have to be doing a lot of things right over time to get that ranking. And there's no conversion path above the fold. And it's like, just make sure that you're being really brutal about how your marketing is paying for itself.
This is all fantastic. That was the right order to go to. I think that was a nice little, wrap up. And conversion path, you mean the sale, getting someone to perform an action after they interact with your content, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. It could be a sale. It could be a sale. It could be just a regular conversion, making sure you understand who's interacting with your content. So getting that email address, getting that name, getting that phone number, that contact information that's going to allow you to build that authority and continue to nurture that lead over time.
Love it. Okay, so I have one question here from an audience member, and then if anyone else has questions too in our little live studio audience, we can get to those as well. So I haven't read this yet, but here is from my friend who works for an optometrist office. I manage over 100 social media pages. It's crazy. She tells me about it all the time. For optometrist offices around the entire country, mostly Facebook. The main audience is women 35 to 65. What other platform should I consider using, and how do I determine and create the best content that resonates with all practice followers? So remember, there's 100 different practices across the country. That's a toughie. I don't know who wants to start, but
I mean, I'm going to kick content over to the content experts because I'm a tools guy.
Fair enough.
So not to make it a difficult answer, but I don't think you can. If there's 100 different markets, they're not going to all want the same thing. So I think you have to think a little bit more about what segments are you trying to reach? Are you trying to reach millennial moms? Are you trying to reach single millennials or millennials without kids that are married? And then start creating content for that person. I think maybe 5-10 years ago, you could have had a broad strategy for women 35 to 65 and kind of hoped and prayed that it was going to work. But I think now it's become more evolved and people want to see a post that is actually talking to them directly. And with targeting, you can line that up so that the person you're talking to is who's going to receive it. I think that's the way to go when it comes to segmenting 100 different Facebook pages, which I assume are in different markets. I think platform-wise, Facebook is a good choice. I think also you could try Pinterest, Instagram. I think especially for optometrist. Can't say it.
I know, I couldn't say it either.
Optometrist?
Optometrist.
I'm smart enough to do this. I can do it. But I remember seeing an ad for a dentist on Instagram, and it just threw me. And I clicked on it because I was not expecting to see an ad for a dentist. So I think you can also go to some place where it's a little bit unexpected. There's also TikTok, and that would be really fun to see an optometrist, doing TikTok things. So those are my advices.
Boom. I think that's good advice. I will not push back, but also give another perspective to say double down on what is already working. So if you can, it's like if I had a whiteboard, I could show like how you split up your energy. If you start putting energy into all these different platforms without being 100% all in, which is I think what you have to do to get any kind of result, you may not be as happy as you want to be. So if there are different ways you can engage, I think the best model right now that I'm seeing in high ticket sales is this community model, right? People want to be in your ecosystem. How can you get people in your ecosystem and start to add value, right? You don't have to always sell, right? How can you start to create buzz around, that space, which is a very unique space, right? But I wouldn't, it wouldn't be a bad idea just to double down on one platform and start to build a community strategy behind it.
Now that you have your content advice, I would say that if you're managing for an optometry practice, and you're paying for those posts, you're not just simply posting, retargeting, and how you retarget is incredibly important. The cost of acquisition of a new patient is much higher than retaining the ones that you have. So if you're going to spend money on ads, you should be able to target the folks who've already come in for an appointment. And there are tools out there that can help you do that.
That's complicated. At least it is to me. Okay, so I have one more question from the audience, and I'm not sure if I don't know if we can answer this, but we can try. So the question was, I have truckloads of audio content, special effects, themes, etc. from past theatrical productions, and I own the IP. What are the best platforms for something like that? I don't know if they meant platforms in terms of like putting stuff out there, like
an audiovisual company, or
yeah. So maybe trying to show off what they own. Let's just say that's.
Sure. Also, the word truckloads from past productions. Is that actual trucks or is that?
It sounds like it could be actual trucks. So let's just say, let's take our best guess, educated guess here. They have tons of cool stuff that they want to show off. Maybe what would they benefit from putting that on TikTok, Instagram?
I'm gonna be the one that says the platform doesn't matter, right? It's just how are you getting in front of people? Like literally for something like that, like it's different. Like I think B2B, B2C, it's a little different. Like AV, like you're talking to venues and production companies. I would say if you can get on the phone and educate, like I think that's the best way in the door. With something like that, like you're not gonna find many, Facebook groups where you can add value. Like it's just so small of a niche, right?
Yeah, and that stuff's expensive too. It's not for the average consumer.
Get on the phone and add value and try to get to that next step.
Well, what's the purpose of that content? Why are you putting it out there? What action do you want folks to take once they find it? That's just like a crucial question. Are you just looking to publish a free library? Because there's plenty of platforms for that.
Yeah, could be brand awareness. Just knowing, hey, I'm the cool guy on TikTok who has all this old equipment from my theatrical productions. That's always a thing. Right, and I wish, but you said something interesting. My brother is a DJ and producer, and he works with kind of on the back channels with like TikTok influencers to use his audio to go viral. So I know we have music producers in the room right now, so that's a very cool thing that you can do. You can kind of reach out to influencers and say, hey, could you use my audio in your TikTok? And then hopefully it takes off from there, or reel. We should do a whole panel on influencer marketing, but that's exhausting. So, does anyone in the studio have any questions before we wrap up? Sure. Yep. Okay. Any questions? And I'll repeat it so that the cameras can hear it. definitely. So this is the mic that works, correct? Okay, so the question was, Brian from Insomniac Studios, project manager, right? That's project manager at Insomniac Studios. He's asking for the cameras here, what can you tell artists about producing content for their, so whether it be social media or whatever, they put so much heart into their music production. How do you get the same passion, right, for making content to, show themselves off to the world?
I think that, let's call it a couple different layers here, right? There's the artist who wants to really grow their career, and then there's the artist who really just wants to make their music. And so for those artists that really want to aggressively grow their career, I'd ask a couple questions to get them excited. Like, one, what do you have to say? What do you want people to hear? And like the way people interact with your music, how do you want them to interact with you? And that's going to require more layers than just the music.
That's good. I think the most powerful thing for me was when a mentor by the name of Jon Ross sat me down and just started asking me about my story. Like, I never knew how to like sit and talk, or it wasn't me, right? Because I was always focused on the mechanics of creating content, digital marketing, whatever. I think the most important thing that inspired me to like go forward and really go all out was just being able to tell my story. I think when they're in a place where they're comfortable with who they are and they're willing to just share that, even if it's whatever genre, right? Like, I think that it communicates and translates into different areas, and content is just a platform to tell their story, and they should be excited about telling their story. And if they're not, it's like, so what are we doing this for? What's this about, right? So that's my approach.
So I'll give an example. So I started watching TikToks like 2 years ago. And a year ago, I saw an artist on TikTok just talking about his life, and talked about how he's working at Verizon Wireless and he's going to quit his job. He wants to be a music producer. And then every once in a while, he'd show us some beats, and then he'd talk more about his job. And then, he quit his job, and he's told us how nobody at his job even cared that he quit. So now we're even cheering him on harder. Like, yes, keep creating that music. Long story short, he played Lollapalooza this year. So Ty Verdes is his name. And I got to watch the whole journey on TikTok. And I think that's one of the most fun things about social is being social and taking people into your life and showing the hard parts and not waiting until you've made it to come out on social. Show them all the things that happen behind the scenes, and let them be a part of that journey.
Yeah. I love that, because that just speaks to how authentic people want their content to be now. Instagram, I love Instagram, but it's very curated. And I think the TikTok trend is just be your natural self, which is fantastic. We need more of that on social. So in the interest of time, I want to wrap up unless there's any other questions from the audience that we can fit in really quick. Sounds like we're good. Okay, so I just want to pass this mic down, again, one more time, and make sure that you can all tell everybody where we can find you, and your socials, LinkedIn, whatever you want. Let's get that going.
So once again, my name is Jack Ekblad. I'm head of partnerships in the Midwest for the HubSpot for Startups program. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Demetri Morris, founder and CEO of Morr Creative. You can find me on LinkedIn, Demetri, and then morrcreative.co, MORR creative.co.
I'm Lauren Ramsey. My social agency is Betsy Bash, and you can find all of our social links on betsybash.com.
I will wrap up by saying thank you all so much on behalf of 2112 and the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. Thank you for rolling with the punches. We're going to get this out on social, YouTube, everything ASAP. And then hopefully you'll come back another time and we can actually go live. Thank you so much.